Number 3 in our post-spring Big 12 power rankings, the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Um, we probably have them lower than most, I would say. And that's probably a little personal because we were burned by them in 2023. And so we're still feeling some of those after effects. I think everyone was burned by them. They were the hot team going into 2023 and didn't live up to expectations. They have a completely different roster build from the top 2 teams. The number 2 portal class in the entire country, not just the Big 12, like number 2 in the country behind LSU. Obviously, they didn't go to the portal for their quarterback. They got Baron Morton back. He's a guy who threw for over 3,300 yards and 27 touchdowns last season. But defensive line, offensive line, defensive line, David Bailey from Stanford, Lee Hunter from UCF. This was a guy, Hunter was scheduled for a visit to Texas after Texas Tech. And Lubbock was like, no, you ain't going to make that. What do you want? And he committed before he even went to Texas. Like, Texas wanted him on their D line. Like, think about that. So they're giving Micah Hudson a second chance. He went to A&M for about 2 seconds, came back to Lubbock. It's a team that's littered with talent. Probably one of their biggest wins was keeping their GM away from Notre Dame in the offseason.
Yeah, let's start right there. Joey McGuire has done a remarkable job this offseason. You just talked about the talent acquisition, but also like creating like building an elite staff around him. James Blanchard is GM. Notre Dame came calling and tried to bring him over there. There's other programs were trying to poach him from Lubbock as well. Texas Tech ended up upping his salary and keep him in there in Lubbock. He's one of the guys that's kind of the pioneers of the GM position in general. When you think about the GM position in college football, Courtney Morgan at Alabama is one of them, and James Blanchard here at Texas Tech are the kind of the first two that kind of like really like blaze the trail for everybody talking about the GM position in college football. There's been so many articles written this offseason and different shows talking about the GM position, how important it's become because of the transfer portal and NIL and just roster management in general. Hey, real quick, look at the bottom of this screen and hit that subscribe button for us, please. And also follow us on Apple and Spotify. It doesn't cost you a thing, and it helps us out a ton. We greatly appreciate it. And then you go out and you add Mac Leftwich from Texas State as their new offensive coordinator, and Sheil Wood as the new defensive coordinator who came over from Houston. I'm going to start with Mac Leftwich here. If you follow the show at all, you know how much I love talking about coaches and coordinators and things like that, and how important it is. It's a huge deal to your success in college football to have dudes that absolutely know what the hell they're doing calling plays on both sides of the ball. But Leftwich was at Texas State under G.J. Kinney and put up some of the most prolific offenses in college football the last couple of years when he was there. He also, before that, was at Incarnate Word. And if you know anything about Incarnate Word, that is where a guy by the name of Cam Ward, who was just the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft, was at one point. And Mac Leftwich was his quarterback's coach and was directly responsible for recruiting. He was his Cam Ward's recruiter that got him to Incarnate Word. So you could say that Mac Leftwich basically discovered Cam Ward. I think it's fair to say that. And so he goes from Incarnate Word with the crazy offenses they were putting up there to Texas State and does a really good job with G.J. Kinney, and he's parlayed that and now to being obviously the offensive coordinator here at Texas Tech. And when you think of Texas Tech, what side of the ball do you normally think of in our lifetime? Offense. Like they're always, it doesn't matter. Back in the Mike Leach days, RIP, Cliff Kingsbury, with obviously Pat Mahomes and that group, and it's carried on even to today. And I don't think that's going to be any different with Leftwich coming in. And Baron Morton, like you said, one of the top as far as returners and passing yards and total touchdown passes that's returning. But then you heard me mention the defensive coordinator, Sheil Wood. Dude, I had no idea until we started studying and like really, honing in on this episode here that's who they picked up as their defensive coordinator. This guy's helped win me quite a bit of money. There is everybody talks about betting the under is not fun. What's fun when you're winning money on them? A couple of years ago, he was the defensive coordinator for our boy, John Sumrall at Troy. And that year, Troy went 12-2 that year. And dude, every week They're just, dude, they're holding like in today's college football. They have one of the top 10 defenses in the country in scoring defense and total defense. And dude, they were flat out just shutting people down. So I do what I do. I go look and see who the hell is this defensive coordinator? And he came from Army under Jeff Monken at Army before he came to Troy. And then after Troy, he went to Tulane and coached under Willie Fritz. Immediately goes to Tulane. Tulane was not a very good defense before he got there. Turns him into a top 15, top 20 defense immediately. Now he goes to Houston last year with Willie Fritz in year one with Houston at Willie Fritz last year. Listen to this. In 2023, Houston was ranked 107th in the nation in total defense. In 2024, in year one, under Shilwood, they ranked 20th. 20th in the country. That is a huge jump. They went from giving up 424 yards per game to 324 yards per game year over year. He's been a defensive coordinator for 5 years. He's never not had a top 35 total defense and scoring defense in all of college football. So I said all that to say, we just talked about when we think of Texas Tech, we think of offense. Dude, Shilwood, adding him as defensive coordinator, I'm serious about this. This is a guy that like we're going to look at probably a few years from now, unless Texas Tech keeps bringing in that oil money and can keep him there. But he's a guy that it wouldn't shock me at all. That like I'm talking about like the most upper tier programs in all of college football are going to be calling for this guy because all of a sudden you're going to look down there in Lubbock and say, "What the hell? Texas Tech's playing defense now?"
Yeah,
and you're going to look and see who the defensive coordinator is, and that's why. It doesn't hurt either that they return quite a bit of production on defense, and obviously their leading tackler, first team All Big 12, Jacob Rodriguez. He's a senior captain, first team All Big 12. He led the Big 12 in tackles last year and was top 10 in the nation in tackles last year. So Shilwood's got a little bit to build around there. Yeah. But overall, man, Joey McGuire did an incredible job. Talent acquisition, adding good staff around him. They're going to be good on offense. They always are. But, dude, I would expect. I mean, again, he's never not had a top 35 defense. Yeah. I would expect Shilwood and this Texas Tech defense to improve and be better. And Guns Up is going to be sitting there competing more than likely for a big chance at a Big 12 championship this year. That's what everybody expects.
Yeah, they're definitely one of those programs right now who maybe this is the last hurrah for NIL, and they're throwing money at guys because, hey, let's get some wins. Let's get a reputation here. And then when this all kind of dies down and we have revenue sharing, hey, guys will still want to come here and play good ball. But let me ask you a two-part question here. Right. So any case to be made for Texas Tech at number one in the Big 12? And why do we have them behind Arizona State and BYU?
I think there could be a case, but I think the most of it is because, yes, while they do have a lot of transfers that they brought in.
Yeah, it doesn't always work. You know,
it doesn't. It doesn't. Yeah. Having a bunch of hired mercenaries doesn't mean just ask Florida State. Okay, yeah, just ask Florida State. Now, on the flip side of that, Ole Miss last year brings in a ton of transfers. I know they didn't make the playoff and they underachieved, but still, Ole Miss was a very good football team last year. They just didn't live up to the hype of making the college football playoff. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of honestly, man, it's kind of a mystery with that. And the other part of it is like we know with the returning production that's coming back for Arizona State, as we're sitting here in the spring doing post-spring outlooks and projecting into the year, like we talk about, we don't look at what you did last year, and that means it's what's going to happen this year. We're looking at your roster that you have now, the coaching staff that you have, what kind of talent that you have around you. And, I mean, Texas Tech, I think you could make an argument, could be listed as the top team in the Big 12 going into the year. I definitely think you can make an argument they could be the second best team, like on paper, behind Arizona State going into this year.
Yeah. We don't talk about schedules on these episodes, but let me throw one more question at you. Mm-hmm. Looking at their win totals and everything, looking at their schedules, who gets more wins this year, Texas Tech or Texas?
Ooh.
Texas Tech has a win total of 8.5. Yep. Texas is 9.5. Obviously, SEC versus Big 12.
Who's
the king of Texas?
I still think Texas, man. I still think Texas had the most wins just because that again, we don't know this yet, but like we can project going into the year, like Texas does have one of the weaker schedules
Mhm.
in the SEC
Yeah.
compared to other teams. But again, some of those teams are going to be much better, like a Florida, for example. They got to go to the swamp. If
Mhm.
DJ Lagway and Florida are healthy, that's a completely different Florida team than Texas played last year in Austin. That's just one example
Yeah.
there. But I would probably say Texas, like, because I think Texas is going to be a 10 or 11 win team. Could Texas Tech be that if these transfers hit? And if Shield Wood is as good as what I just said that he has been so far as a defensive coordinator, and he can just improve that defense a little bit, being one of the worst defenses in the Big 12 historically and last year as well. If he can just improve that defense a little bit with all the transfers that they brought in, Texas Tech could be a 10-win plus type team this year. They really could.